When the world is in crisis and people are looking for hope and answers, Thai PBS World is there with you with the best minds of the day. Join us on Thai PBS World Tonight, every weekdays at 7 p.m. Thai PBS World, we bring Thailand to the world.
สวัสดีค่ะ Very good evening and welcome to Thai PBS World Tonight. I'm Natapanu.
And I am Natha Gomonwadin. Kunat, in the digital world, the diplomats around the world have to change their strategy in terms of working. And they have to be more assertive, more open. And we call this as public diplomacy.
Right.
And to what extent that Ministry of Foreign Affairs have been doing on public diplomacy. Tonight, Kun Thep Chayong and I talk to Kun Natapanu Nopakun, Deputy Director General of Ministry of Foreign Affairs on public diplomacy in Thailand and what the new platform launched by MFA Thailand Now means for Thailand.
So thank you for joining us. Welcome to the program. We all know that public diplomacy is not something new, right? Many countries have been using public diplomacy to create better understanding and to project a positive image about themselves to the rest of the world. But my question is why all of a sudden the public diplomacy has become such a buzz with the foreign ministry?
Well, I think we aim to use public diplomacy to set the agenda, to appeal to various audiences. And with this age of disruption, with the challenges, with the digital age, of course, we have to keep pace with what's happening in the world and the message that we send out to the world in terms of foreign affairs, Thailand's foreign relations and everything. So I think it's not just during this period that we started to hype up the public diplomacy measures. It's been a trickle effect. It's been ongoing for quite some time, but it might have been obvious during these past few years because we've become more digitized with the tools, and it has been a policy of the past permanent secretaries of foreign affairs as well. So I think we can't be slow. We have to keep pace with the world that's ever continuing to move and never stopping. I guess that's the point.
Are you saying that there might have been a gap of perception or understanding of Thailand among people outside the country?
Yes, definitely. That is something that's inevitable. I think it's something that is happening to every country. The misperception, the fake news, the vacuum that is produced in certain instances. So to fill that, I think we have to be very active in terms of our presence online, our digital diplomacy as well. It's something that's been studied and expanded upon during the past few years. Especially there's many articles and many people talking about this digital diplomacy, how foreign affairs, how ministries of foreign affairs around the world can become more in touch and in tune with the digital world and the audiences around the world. There's actually a book called The Naked Diplomat by Ambassador Tom Fletcher, a UK ambassador to Lebanon, a former. And he actually outlines how digital diplomacy can make diplomacy more effective. And the diplomat now is of course, sort of like naked, so to speak, meaning that there's no boundaries. They are transparent because today there are such things as the citizen diplomat. Everyone can be a diplomat. Just like the way that today there's this word called citizen journalist. Everyone can be a journalist online.
And the form of public diplomacy must be something to do with Thailand Now, the new website that had just been launched as well. Do you consider this as a form of soft power from Thailand?
Yes, definitely. The image, the persona that we have online for Thailand, of course, it's very important to build. So the website that was launched last week, it's by support of the Foreign Ministry. It's called Thailand Now and thailandnow.in.th. So it portrays Thailand's image in a way that is modern. It involves all the lifestyle, cultural news, our soft power, and just projected in a more appealing light. So that's the objective of why we supported this portal, so that the Thai narrative can also be widespread, more widespread than a narrative of Thailand, but written by people who are non-Thai.
And so far, what's the perception from the website?
Yes, the reaction has been good. Some people, of course, see the link with the foreign ministry, but I think that in the long run, it will be quite effective. Many countries also have these kind of portals, which are supported by government, but they have a narrative which is the local narrative, the local storytelling on different issues.
But what do you think people can get from Thailand now that they cannot get from other websites or any other social media platforms?
Yes, sure. Accurate information, up-to-date information in the Thai narrative, because it involves a network of independent Thai writers and Thai former journalists as well. So the Thai narrative on Thailand is there for you already on that portal. So there's no second guessing of information because it's actually verified information and verified, and the articles are quite of high quality. Right now we have a lot of information, but of course, as mentioned, we just launched it a few weeks ago. So it's in the beginning stage. So hope that it will be useful for those who want to search information about Thailand and project a good image of Thailand for those who want to visit Thailand in the future.
I see. I've taken a look at the website, and it is described as a platform that brings forth information on various aspects of Thai life, culture, current events, and facts. When you say facts, you mean facts can be both positive and negative, right?
Yes. We actually want to strike that balance. When you write things about yourself, often when people write things about themselves, they often write in a good, positive light. But in this portal, the projection we want is a more balanced one. So kind of more realistic with the challenges involved in each issue as well. Not only hard sell information. Yeah.
I see. You mean that even on topics that may not be so positive about the country, you will not gloss over it?
Yes, exactly. This is not a source of information that is just for advertisement. It's for understanding, a more balanced understanding of Thailand. But as I mentioned, most important is the Thai narrative of Thailand.
From your own practice, that you must be following the classic style of foreign diplomacy. But in this age of digital diplomacy, how the practice of your daily life as a diplomat has changed from the textbook? Like, how do you set the borderline between using your own Twitter account and MFA account? What's the practice?
Yes, that's a very interesting issue that the Foreign Ministry has actually been exploring and implementing as well. So in this age of this disruption, of course, as I mentioned, we cannot stay behind. Everything has to be in tune with what's happening in the world, and we have to reach all of the audiences and fill in the information gap and information vacuum. So for digital diplomacy, for social media, we actually encourage our personnel to have personal accounts, and to make use of the informal information that is released to help support the work of the foreign ministry. Of course, there's a fine line. There's a balance between what's formal and informal. But the reality of today is that most of the content that people are interested in are more of the informal. The more of the informal, the more of this descriptive kind of social media posts, rather than the formal, diplomatic kind of press releases. So we encourage our personnel, especially the younger diplomats, to make use of their own personal social media account to support the work of the foreign ministry. But of course, there's always a disclaimer on social media that this is like a personal, account. So endorsements, likes doesn't mean endorsements, and retweets do not mean endorsements, and things like that. But the younger generation is very important. They are very keen in using social media, and that's the direction that we want to go. We want them to help support Thai foreign policy, the image of Thailand, our work, our relationship with other countries through knowledge and understanding on social media as well.
And does that completely change the landscape of diplomacy around the world, in which the diplomat or ambassador of each country has to voice their own personal view as well?
Yes, I think it does. It really actually changes the way that diplomacy works. So in the textbooks, that's kind of a different scenario. But in this day and age, I think the social media presence is very important. Many countries communicate among themselves on social media or between foreign ministries and reach different audiences in other countries. So I think it's very important to be in tune with this sort of disruption. So if the official stance is out on a particular issue, perhaps many ambassadors these days, they sort of come out again, to explain further or clarify in more simpler, non-diplomatic terms, non-official jargon, to explain further to the common people on why this particular country, for example, has chosen this path in terms of foreign affairs, why sign this trade agreement, why reach out and focus on all these things, but in a more easy to understand, digestible language.
So that means that the diplomats of today need to be much more media savvy than the predecessors, right?
Definitely, yes, definitely.
No, but as far as you're concerned, I'm sure that because you're the most visible face of the foreign ministry, but largely because of your presence at the weekly press conferences on the COVID-19. So how do you think this pandemic has changed the way that diplomats will work? We have been talking a lot about the new normal, right, in the midst of COVID-19. So if there's to be some kind of a new normal for diplomats, especially Thai diplomats, what would that be?
Yes. A new normal would affect everybody around the world, of course. For diplomats in particular, the meetings, the personal interactions that we have are very, very important. That still should remain. But of course, there has to be perhaps a hybrid of the way that we work. So in terms of conferences, meetings, more of online video conferencing, and try to project what you want to discuss with your counterpart, but not not face to face. So that adaptation has to be in place. However, it would make a difference because I've seen, for example, in the United Nations meetings or General Assembly, sometimes when it's more a video conference, diplomats don't express themselves that much. The feeling, the intensity of a particular speech, is not that much as visible, as when you have a personal people physically attending meetings. But I think it's something that's necessary. It's something that all diplomats have to learn to do, to be more, as you mentioned, more media savvy. I would say more social media savvy as well, and use digital diplomacy to the advantage of your own country. I guess it's something that everyone has to learn because diplomats have to adapt to the trends of what's happening around the world. So if the trend is on social media, if the trend is the information is to be known, is to be learned on social media, then that's the way to go, I think.
I'm sure that one of the biggest challenges that you are facing is to answer question about the ongoing political situation in Thailand, right? All this series of anti-government protests. So what kind of question have you been getting and how do you address these questions?
Oh, well, explaining or clarifying the political situation in Thailand or in any other country, it's, of course, one of the main tasks of diplomats. So we project it in a way that it is part of a process of political development. Of course, diplomats, we don't represent a particular government. That has to be clear. We don't represent a particular politician. Of course, we represent Thailand as a whole, the whole gamut of the whole spectrum of Thailand, of Thai society. So in terms of various political events or demonstrations, we bring out the constructive or the put it as a path towards our better development. So for example, the demonstrations that Thailand and many countries have been having throughout the years, we can say that it's part of an open society. Okay, we can say that it's part of, well, not actually just use the word welcome it, but then we take it as a part of our country's learning process. And then whatever other information we have, those are the points that we send to our ambassadors around the world. But of course, it's answering questions like these, of course, have their limitations. Sometimes we cannot just, of course, diplomats, we represent the country as a whole, so we don't take sides as civil servants as well, but for the good of the country. Yeah.
So this is certainly a very diplomatic way of answering my question.
Yeah, I'm a diplomat. I'm a diplomat.
But in terms of global politics, we all know that it's getting very complicated, especially tension between the US and China, and it must have affected foreign policy and the way diplomats are working around the world, including Thailand as well. So what's your take in terms of tension between these two superpowers and how it will set the tone of foreign diplomats or foreign affairs policy in Thailand?
Because we're sure that either both sides want Thailand to be on their side, right?
Of course. That's a very good and very classic question when people meet with diplomats everywhere. So I guess for Thailand, we've taken the more balanced approach. To be blunt, we don't have adversaries like other countries around the world. We're kind of balanced. We're kind of well liked, accepted and recognized in many things. We have good relations with many countries, including superpower countries, of course, long-standing, enduring relations. So I guess the key word for Thailand is balance. We, like many countries, there's no reason for us to take sides. We balance the positive, constructive parts of each relationship and have them complement each other. But for Thai diplomats, I guess it's a challenge as well on how to balance, how to strike that balance, because in terms of trade, there might be one decision that has to be made over another. In terms of other kinds of relationships, so I guess it's something that's a reality in the world. Geopolitics is a reality in the world. So our balance there is something that we have been looking for in detail, on how to act for Thailand. But of course, many of the discussions have been on social media as well. So, of course, social media is very important. So some countries, of course, don't trust a social media giant of another country, and it's banned, it's blocked, and things like that. So the battle has gone there as well. It's gone there as well. But again, I guess for Thailand, for face-to-face diplomacy and for diplomacy on digital diplomacy, I think we keep the same tone of being kind of flexible and balanced. But that does not mean that we're not firm in our foreign policy.
But do you think there will be more pressure in the future for Thailand to take sides?
Well, I guess it might be possible. But I'm confident that many countries, almost all countries around the world, understand the positioning of Thailand, and it wouldn't be taking sides in terms of generally in the bigger picture, because relationships have different angles, I think. So they are decisions in foreign policy. For example, the question might be like, why have a trade pact with this country first and not this country, and things like that, or in terms of protocol, or in terms of other aspects of the relationship, people-to-people relationship. But I think both the U.S. and China, of course, understand Thailand's positioning, and they have been our very close friends and allies in different forms. Of course, the U.S. A centuries-old relationship, closest ally. They designated in the past a major non-NATO ally. And in China, of course, a very close neighbor, a very close, even by blood, people-to-people relationship in terms of business and everything. So the positioning of Thailand, I think it's clear enough for countries to understand that they will not pose that question and make it as a criteria for further deepening the relationship. I think that they won't. Yeah.
It is reported that a group of Chinese diplomats, they have their own terms of warrior diplomats to try to counter with the U.S. diplomat or U.S. foreign policy program. What's the strategy or what's the tactic of Thai diplomat as well in order to keep being watchful of this policy by China?
The Chinese have what they call the wolf warriors, right? Do we have the kind of warriors?
I think Thai diplomacy has been has been very effective, even since the past centuries, and Thai diplomats have been well respected around the world. So I think that in terms of being warriors, I think Thai diplomats are already warriors in their own sense. Okay, but we don't have a similar target as other countries, because as I mentioned, we don't have adversary in terms of country adversaries. We cultivate relationships with everybody. So I guess the challenge is to become more rigid in terms of our Thai warrior diplomats, to expand more boundaries in terms of trade, to use our soft power so that people will even like us more, appeal to us more, and set the agenda as not as someone who would really have really step on people's toes, but to have people recognize that we are flexible warrior diplomats, and we are able to come up with a solution that's constructive and acceptable by all. So I think that's the charm. That's the charm of Thai diplomats, warriors with charm, I would say.
All right, I think Thailand has been given high marks for its handling of the COVID-19 pandemic, right? I'm sure you have been talking to a lot of diplomats. So what kind of image do you think Thailand have now in the midst of this pandemic, and yet Thailand is in such a position that being seen as being so successful in dealing with the situation? And would this image, I'm sure it's a positive one, help in any way with the public diplomacy that the foreign ministry is pursuing?
Yes, exactly. So we've been ranked quite highly in many rankings, international organizations, World Health Organization, and commended. But of course, we take that with pride. But of course, we feel that of course there's still a lot to do. So with that trust, I think that the global community has on Thailand's health system, on our management, on our communication, on how we keep the numbers low, and things like that. So there's that trust with Thailand. So I think that it's an opportunity for us to expand further in terms of public diplomacy, meaning that people in different countries around the world they trust Thailand's health system. So therefore, our public diplomacy may focus on expanding the health medical service sector. We might have controlled tourism. We might have tourism which is safe and COVID-free. So that trust is there, and our public diplomacy may focus on and may build upon the things that people recognize us already. So the participation, of course, of all sectors of Thai society in helping to solve COVID, that proves something for Thailand that we can be strong. We can be strong. Our society can be strong to help solve one problem, a global problem. Okay, so our public diplomacy can bring out those aspects and say that, of course, young people have a say in society. The health workers are strong. We have tourism, which will not bring more pollution or mass tourism, more quality tourism. Our businesses are ready. Our department stores have all the measures to prevent COVID. Until this day, we don't have a high number as other ASEAN countries, for example. So we bring all of these to use as content, as a substance for our public diplomacy outreach and soft power, for people to recognize how constructive Thailand can be. So it's a sharing process as well. In our public diplomacy message, we would want to share with other countries our experience, our expertise. And when things get up and going, up and running, hoping that more people will come into Thailand when the time comes, and of course have a positive image of Thailand. I think that's the objective of public diplomacy.
Okay. Of course, we have to admit that Thailand cannot be perfect, right?
Of course.
But
Yeah.
you see anything that could be worrying or negative about Thailand's image in the eyes of the outside world that you need to work on to address?
Yes, of course. Image building is very challenging. So for Thailand, I'm not saying, of course, that we have a perfect image. Of course, every country has their challenges. But in terms of the perception towards the world, I think that can be better. There's many issues like the issue of dual pricing. For foreign visitors who come to Thailand, sometimes some establishments charge them more than locals. So that's something that we would have to address. But saying that, of course, I think we are liberal and open enough to welcome many foreign friends to work and live in Thailand. So just the issue of more equality, I guess, more equality in society that affects foreign visitors. And of course, the perception, we don't have a xenophobic mentality. I mean, we welcome foreign nationals for business, for study and everything. But just sometimes we would have to be quite mindful and sensitive of issues like these, because we're just one country living in a world with 198, 200 countries, and our positioning has to be very respectful, mutual respect to other countries, other people around the world. Yeah.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much for sharing with us your thoughts and missions on public diplomacy and digital diplomacy. Thank you. สวัสดีค่ะ
สวัสดีครับสวัสดีครับ
So in the digital world, the diplomats have to change a lot and they have to be quite resilient in terms of coping with new strategy in the digital world.
And that wraps up tonight's edition of Thai PBS World Tonight. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you on Monday. สวัสดีค่ะ
สวัสดีค่ะ